Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi. We've got a really interesting guest on today because I would call her a real survival right now and going through a lot of challenges as it's been, fairly early for her. Her daughter was killed 3 years ago. So in the world of grief and loss, particularly for child loss, it's early, as a lot of you are listening, So Heidi, would you like to introduce our guest?
Sure, I'd love to. So, Mom, we are going to talk today with Brooke Carlock about making sense of loss. She is the host of the Mourning Coffee Podcast and the creator of The Grief Sucks with Brooke Carlock YouTube channel. I love that title because I do a workshop called Sibling Loss Sucks. She is she is a bereaved mom who lost her daughter Libby, and you've got a shirt on that says "Live like Libby" right now, which I love.
Do. Yep.
Wonderful. She also has lost her dad, her mom, and her stepmom within a year and a half,
Yeah.
which is pretty unbelievable. My father died in 2020. I mean, to lose all those people. You are the author of Grief Sucks, but Your Life Doesn't Have to. Love the name.
Thank you.
Which is a National Indie Excellence Award finalist book. You are an Open to Hope writer. Thank you. And you've written some amazing things. And you have been recently featured in a chapter of the book Faces of Grief. And I just did 3 cable shows about Faces of Grief. So that was, you did a chapter in it, and your chapter was about what?
It's about the loss of Libby and basically kind of how I'm surviving and trying to turn it into something more positive than what it could be. And also my son, who was also in the accident with Libby, wrote a chapter as well for Faces of Grief.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Chapter.
Yeah, his chapter is basically how he's doing because he was responsible for the accident. He was driving the car when Libby died. So it's kind of going through his experience being the one who survived.
How old is he now?
He was 18.
And how old is he now?
He is now 21, almost 22.
Wow.
I
And
give him a lot of credit for writing a chapter. That's
Yeah.
amazing that he did that.
Yeah, I thought so too. I was hesitant when I threw it out to him. It was just like, do you think you could do this, or do you have any desire to do this? And I was surprised that he was like, sure, Mom, I'll do it, and wrote it. And I think it's incredible. He did a great job. So
now that we have a little background, tell us a little bit about what happened.
I lost my sister when she was 32. She died of pneumonia, of all things. We had no idea. We knew she was sick, but she went to sleep, and apparently her lungs filled up with fluid. She died in her sleep overnight. And
Wow.
and it was a total shock. And that was when I was in my 20s. So that was really, my first experience with a big loss that wasn't, like grandparents or people you expect.
So that was your first really significant loss, which was
That
big.
was a big one, and it was
Okay.
sudden and very unexpected. And then actually, not too long then after my sister died, my brother's wife, my sister-in-law, Heather, she ended up dying of brain cancer. And that was like a very long, drawn out illness. So it was really like my second sister passing away. So at that point, I was like, oh my gosh, this is just terrible. It was one of those things that when I finally hit 32, because they both died when they were 32, it just really struck me like, okay, I've made it this far. Like every year past 32 felt like a gift. But then a lot of times I overlook those 2 losses because of what happened later. And that was it would have been 2021, November of 2021. First, my dad died of a heart attack unexpectedly. He was driving home from work and pulled over and died on the side of the road in his car on his way home from work. So that was a shock. And then 10 days after my dad died, on the day of my dad's funeral, my stepmom overdosed on drugs and alcohol and died on the day of his funeral. So
Wow.
then that was kind of the second shock. And then in February was when my daughter Libby died. And what happened with that was I was divorced at the time. My ex-husband David had custody of the kids. they visited him on Wednesdays and then every other weekend. So on Wednesdays, my son Max who was 18 at the time, he would pick up Libby from her dance class and they would go to my ex-husband's
And
house.
she was 10 years old.
She was 10. Yep. So she was 10. Yeah. And I have another son, Grayson, who was 16 at the time. He was supposed to be in the car, but he had taken an extra shift at work. So he was working and thankfully was not in the car when the accident happened. But my son, so Max was driving to David's house and his check engine light came on in the car. And that had never happened to him before. So he was nervous about the check engine light. So he called my ex-husband and said, what do I do? You know, what should I do with my check engine light? And so his dad told him to pull over in a little market that they were coming up to. And we think what happened is that Max was just kind of distracted, trying to get to the place where his dad told him to pull over. And he slowed at an intersection, but didn't stop the whole way. And when he went through the intersection, it's a notoriously bad intersection. It's really hard to see. And there are a lot of trucks. There's an auto auction. So a lot of trucks drive on that road. And they were hit on Libby's side by a car carrier truck. And Libby died instantly from what they tell us. So by the time I got to the scene, she was already gone. Max had a head injury, but he's now fine. He ended up okay. It was nothing permanent, thank goodness. Yeah, so that was what happened with that. And then fast forward a little bit, my mom got pancreatic cancer and then died. So all of that happened within a span of 18 months. It was a year and a half and I lost both of my parents, my step parent and my daughter. So yeah, typically people just kind of look at me like, holy cow, that is a lot of loss in a short amount of time.
Did you feel like you could live through all that?
It was definitely a struggle. At the time that I lost Libby, I was upset about my dad, obviously, you know, that was devastating. But you expect, I guess, your parents to die before, you know, but you expect them to go before you, but you don't expect your children to go before you, and especially not a 10-year-old, you know, and it was just so out of the blue, you know, it was an accident and there's no way that you can kind of mentally prepare for that. So despite all the losses that I've had, I don't think anything can prepare you for losing a child or anyone that's really that close to you. And then honestly, with my mom, after losing Libby, I feel like I was kind of numb at that point. It was just, there was so much loss. And hers was a very long, drawn out illness that was, you know, difficult. And I was just so still, you know, in shock and kind of mourning my daughter when my mom passed. So that kind of all ran together, unfortunately.
I know somewhere you said that you weren't able to see the body.
Right.
I wonder how that was for you and who suggested that you not see the body remains.
So that was pretty immediate. I found out about the accident because my ex-husband called me, and the only thing that I heard him say, he was screaming into the phone, and I heard him say, I think they're dead. And I had no idea, you know, I was just like, what? And then he hung up, and then I couldn't get a hold of him. And then when I finally did, he told me to go to the intersection where the accident happened. So I went there. And as soon as I got out of the car, you know, I ran over to him and they told me that Libby was dead. And my son's car was there. And I started walking towards the car and they said, no, the police officer stopped me. They had a, you know, it was, you know, the whole scene was just full of flashing lights and sirens and everything. And it was just kind of crazy. And at that point, you feel like you're out of your mind. You know, I mean, nothing seems real. You're just sort of in this fog. So they wouldn't let me go towards the car, and they had draped a white sheet over it so that I couldn't see anything. And apparently, David, my ex-husband, when he got there, the police officers actually had to like grab a hold of him and keep him from running to the car. And then they basically just explained to us, like, that we didn't want to see her like that. They said just for our own mental health to not have that image. Libby was such a beautiful light and just, you know, full of joy and happiness and always smiling. And the last memory that I have of her is her walking into dance class. And we had this routine where we'd blow each other a kiss as she walked into dance. And that was the last memory. That was the last time I'd ever seen her, was, you know, her blowing me a kiss, walking into her dance class. And I am grateful now that that is the image that I have of her in my head. And I try not to think about what she looks like. I mean, I will definitely say in the earliest months and even, you know, past a year, that is what gives me, I think, the most trauma, is imagining, because your brain, because I didn't see it, your brain wants to create the image. And all I can think is, you know, it's this giant car carrier, huge truck smashing into a Ford Taurus, you know. My brain like tries to recreate what she might have looked like, and that is, I have to stop myself from doing that, because I realized that that is not helpful for my healing. So yeah.
So what have you found helpful for your healing?
For me, a lot of it was writing. That was my outlet. I've been a freelance writer. I had been before Libby died for years and years, my whole adult life, pretty much. So after she died, I did a lot of just journaling, writing down what I was feeling. And then my kind of survival mechanism in the beginning was I created a blog, because I'm introverted and I had so many people that kept asking me how I was doing and sending me texts and calling and wanting to talk to me, but I did not want to talk to anyone. And it was such a struggle at first that I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to write down everything that I'm feeling and just be brutally honest about it. And I put it online on a blog. And then I just said to people when they asked me how I was doing, I was like, if you really want to know, go here and you can read, and this is what I really feel like. And so that kind of became my outlet. And that was how I started getting into the grief world, honestly, because I had people that I had never met before that were grieving, that would reach out with messages just thanking me for being so honest and sharing my story. And that kind of gave me, I guess, a purpose, something to do, somewhere to focus that grief. Just was sharing it with other people. So
Brooke, I know that you were at the Compassionate Friends this year and you did a workshop on self-sabotage and grief.
Yep.
And I'm just wondering how you self-sabotaged did you self-sabotage?
I did.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I would say a lot of my self-sabotage came with being kind of a workaholic, trying to work the grief away and not think about it.
You're a school teacher, right?
What was that?
You teach? You're a school
Yes,
teacher?
I'm a full-time teacher. I teach 8th grade English, and I had to go back to work. It was less than a month after Libby died that I went back to work. So part of it was just survival, because when you're teaching, you're in front of a room full of 8th graders all day long, and you can't really break down. You know, I tried to be professional, so it's kind of like putting a mask on for all of those working hours and then sort of, you know, letting those emotions go at home. But then what I started doing was like teaching all day, and then afterwards I would be writing the blog, and then eventually I started making YouTube videos, and I was, you know, doing other things that were helpful for me, but I also, now looking back, realized that I was trying, it was a way of distracting my grief.
You were trying to survive, girl, and you have.
Yeah.
A lot of things to try to survive, and you've done it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
And I know you said this year's been hard, because I listened to a couple of your podcasts, but you said this year has been hard because you are an 8th grade teacher and Libby would be in 8th grade this year.
She would, at my school. And so I am teaching all of her friends and classmates. And it's difficult. I mean, there's no way around it. And I, like I said, I don't sugarcoat and act like everything's positive in grief, because there are definitely, definitely some rough spots. And this year is a rough spot. It is definitely challenging, because every day I wonder what she would have looked like and who she would have still been friends with and what classes she would have had, and just stupid little things like we had a twin day at school, and a couple of other teachers that had kids in the building were twinning with their kids. And it's just so like, oh, it very breaks your heart, because I know Libby would have been so excited to do something like that. And just the fact that I don't get to do that is really hard. I'm missing all of those milestones with her that I see happening in real time with her friends. And that's definitely, definitely a challenge.
So what are you doing to deal with that? Do you have any special things that you're trying to do for yourself?
Um, Really what I'm kind of doing the most is making sure that I have time to decompress in the afternoons when I'm done teaching. Because again, it is putting up a lot of a front, acting like I'm okay and like things aren't bothering me. But then at home, I make sure to give myself that extra care, where it's just like I can breathe, and just something mindless like watching a movie or whatever, or going for a walk with a friend, um, just to kind of shift my focus a little bit. I've tried to be very good with that. So that's really what I'm doing. It's kind of one of these years. I just sort of look at it like I've got to get through this year. It's just one of those things where I
Makes
just need
sense.
to power through it. And I know
Yeah.
it's not going to be forever. And just take care of myself as much as I can while it's happening. I did go to Compassionate Friends pretty early on after I lost Libby. I kind of have my little close group of friends that I know that I can call or talk to whenever I need somebody. And I found that that is what has worked for me the best.
I had a friend who was a very well-known therapist, and his comment was, if you had 3 close friends that you could tell everything to, you
Yep.
wouldn't need a therapist. And I will say, I think to me, when I watch you and hear you, that I'm impressed with, you wrote for us on Open to Hope about tell your grief story, how important it is to do that. And I think that, you've got to keep telling your story. I like to say, tell your story till you're bored with it.
Yep. That is very, very true. And I do. And I think also the other thing that has really, really helped me is helping other people. So I always that's one thing I always suggest to grieving people is it's amazing how much it can help your own heart doing things for other people, even if it's not grief related. So yeah, Live Like Libby is one of the things that I do that makes me happy and makes me feel like I'm honoring her. And that has really, really helped my grief as well.
And don't be surprised if after you power through this year, you might decide to do something different. Because I remember powering through. I was a clinical nurse specialist at the University of Rochester, and I remember powering through. And then I thought, now what?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I am. I have other things in the works. I'm working on. I've already written my grief book, but now I am working on fiction books, historical fiction, and they're for like middle grade students between like 10 and 14, around what Libby would have been, and she's the main character, so it's called Libby's Frontier. And
I love
yeah,
this.
I've finished 2 of them already, and I'm trying to get the first one. I'm querying now. In the publishing trenches, trying to find an agent for that one. I love writing. It doesn't feel like work to me. Like writing those, I just am smiling the whole time I'm doing it. So it's another thing that kind of is a healthy outlet for me as well.
Well, good for you. Take care of yourself. And I think you're doing a great job. And wow,
Well, thank you.
early. And I hope we get to see you at Compassionate Friends. We'll be there.
Yes, I will definitely be there. It'll be great to see you guys.
Tell us where people can find you.
The easiest way is just to go to brookecarlock.org. That is my main website. It has links to everything, but also my book, which is called Grief Sucks, But Your Life Doesn't Have to. That's available on Amazon or barnesandnoble.com, wherever you buy your books online. lots of people have said that that has been really helpful for them. It's my personality. Again, nothing sugar coated. It's just very raw and honest observations about what helped me with my grief. So I'm really proud of that one. And then my YouTube channel, like I said, is Grief Sucks with Brooke Carlock, and I have, I think, over like 300 videos at this point, just offering helpful advice and tips and sharing my journey. So hopefully that will help other people as well.
And you're going to want to read her articles on Open to Hope. She's got some great things on Tell Your Grief Stories, Sabotaging Your Grief Journey, Finding Meaning After Loss. People say stupid things. And next time we have you on the show, we got to ask you what the stupid things people say are.
Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot. Yes. And then the other way people can kind of help if they're interested is through livelike.libby.org. It's the nonprofit that my ex-husband and I created in Libby's honor. So we provide scholarships to dancers because Libby was a competitive dancer. So dancers in financial need, we've given away $38,000 so far in scholarships for dancers. So I feel like that would make Libby,
there's a darling video
smile.
of Libby on there. What a talented kid.
Yeah, she was amazing. For being only 10, she was incredible. Yep.
All right, Brooke. Well, thank you so much for being on.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Brooke, thank you so much for everything that you're doing in Libby's name and in her honor. You really are an inspiration because you are showing all of us that despite the many, many, many losses you've had in your life, you are still open to the idea of hope and finding hope.
Yeah, well, that's what you guys are all about, and you are an inspiration as well. So thank you.
Thank you. We want to thank everybody for watching this show today. And Heidi and I always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on us until you find your own, and God bless.
I'm Dr. Heidi Horsley. You have been listening to Open to Hope, the podcast. You can follow Open to Hope on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more, visit us at opentohope.com and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe.
I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. Join us again next week for another Open to Hope conversation, where we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own.